All right. My name's Justin. I'm a recovered alcoholic. My sobriety date is November 10th, 2013. And like Jason said, yeah, I'm the chair for this current NECYPAA. And I also have a home group. I was told that's very important to have. My home group is the Precise Method group, which meets in Manchester, New Hampshire, Wednesday nights at 7. So I actually just got out of my home group and got down here to get on the computer and talk with you guys. And they're all eating at Applebee's, so I'm missing fellowship tonight. But I don't turn down an opportunity to carry the message. Congratulations to everyone who is counting days and celebrating sobriety tonight. That was really cool to see, and thank you to everyone who is doing the work to keep this thing going. This is pretty remarkable. I don't do a lot of Zoom, so it's cool to see all that actually goes into all this, and I'm pretty impressed. I'm just going to set a timer for myself here to give you all some hope, because I can go on. But no, it's an honor to be here, and it's always an honor to be asked to share my experience with what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for my life. Because there was a time where I was also, at day zero, and coming into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because it was the last place I had to go. No one else really wanted me around. The families had changed the locks. Even the people I got loaded with kind of weren't letting me on the couch anymore. And I was hopeless, and I think that's the best way to start this journey is with some hopelessness, right? Because if I'm not hopeless, then I'm not going to reach out for any hope. Um, and I'd visited the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous many times throughout my journey. And I did a lot of, going into the rooms of AA and not really getting involved in AA. I did a lot of sitting in meetings and leaving right after, making sure no one ever talked to me. Because I knew there was I've been around the rooms enough to know if I had started talking to any of y'all, I'd probably end up with some kind of service job. I'd end up making coffee or end up making sweeping the floors or greeting, and like that was the last thing I wanted. Like I didn't come into sobriety like super pumped to be sober. That's not my experience. Like when I come in, usually I'm pretty broken. And I've already convinced myself by the time I get here that like this isn't going to work, you know. Um, and I truly believe that like I was very close to death before I got sober this last time. I don't think I would have lasted much longer out there. Um, like my life looked very alcoholic, but I still didn't really know what alcoholism was. Um, uh, I got sober at 24 years old this time, and I came in like with zero life skills, other than I could survive out in the streets, but like I didn't know how to like live a normal life, and in fact like that terrified me. Like just being a normal person scared the hell out of me. Um, and like I couldn't put the drink down, and then like when I get removed from it is usually the only time I would be able to put it down. And I usually get put somewheres where I can be physically removed. Um, and By circumstance, not any virtue of mine, I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous again this last time, and I was living in a halfway house out here in New Hampshire. Um, I'm originally from Western Massachusetts, from the Berkshires, but I ended up in this halfway house, and like it was the last place I wanted to be because like it was basically it was basically like a big book boot camp. Um, and I just didn't think this stuff was going to work because in my mind I thought I had tried it. I thought all the times where I just sat in meetings like I thought I had tried it. But like I never honestly work the steps. Like I'd gotten sponsors before, and I would just kind of lie to them. I'd find the sponsor that would be easy to manipulate. Um, I've written like completely dishonest 4 steps before and left tons of stuff off, and like there was no way I was going to make amends because that just sounded crazy to me. Like the fact that you people will go face to face and admit the things that you've done, and I'd hear people in meetings be like, "Yeah, I went and made amends to this person I robbed thousands of dollars from." I'm like, "You guys are crazy!" Like I'm not doing that. Y'all are a little extreme. And thank God that this time I was just like people ask sometimes like what was different this time, and like not much was different other than like I had just a tiny shred more willingness than I had at previous attempts to like take suggestions of the people in the room. Um, in my first meeting back, I did something weird that I never do, which is I raised my hand and I said, "Hey, I'm new here. I need help." And usually I was very quiet because like I said, I didn't want to talk to any of you people. Um, and and it was a men's meeting, and it was a decent meeting because how you can tell a decent meeting if there's a new person in the room, like you're gonna get swarmed after, you know. Um, and This guy came up to me, and he had remembered me from previous attempts at being sober. And he said, "Justin, it's like really good to see you again." And like just the fact that this guy remembered me, like it meant something to me because like no matter how I ever showed up to Alcoholics Anonymous, like, and I was a guy who showed up to Alcoholics Anonymous drunk a lot and messed up a lot, and that's okay. If you had your last drink tonight, and like you have a seat here in Alcoholics Anonymous, like don't ever let anyone tell you you don't. Um, and this guy was talking to this guy, and he's like, "Hey, so Justin, like we're looking for this this we're looking for a coffee maker for this late night meeting tomorrow night." I was like, "Okay, cool, man. I hope you find someone, right?" And he looked at me like the old timers do, and he gave me that smile of like, "Well, Justin, like I think it's gonna be you." And I was like, "God, no!" And it was like that was my worst fear come true. Like here I am, first day back, and like I have a job, and like that helped me get into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous and like start to meet people and start to and in that meeting I met my sponsor, the guy who would put my hand in the hand of God's, and I got all sorts of service positions, and I love service. And I think service is super important to this deal. Like even when I'm new, like there's stuff I can do around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I can make coffee. Like if I got 2 days, like I can help the guy with no days. Like anything I can do to think of others, right, is imperative for my survival. My sponsor said, and like the guy that I met that became my sponsor that I asked to help me, he was like the last guy on earth that I would have ever asked at any other previous attempt. He was the guy who would be like, talking about the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and talking about our literature and like the kind of, don't drink, go to meeting, ask for help meetings. And, he wasn't the most popular guy always for that. It's a weird thing sometimes in AA. We can become unpopular by talking about our literature. But he was the guy that like um, if you asked that guy for help, you were going to do some serious work. Um, and I because of this thing that happens to me is like not only like I can't stop when I'm drinking, but like I also have this mind that like it's going to take me back to the first one over and over again. And like I knew that. So I knew it was like a matter of time before I picked up again if I didn't do something different. I'm not a guy who can hold my breath for very long. Um, and I asked this guy for help because like a lot of my problems too, like start when the bottle stops. Like me sober without any kind of solution, if I'm not working any kind of program around here, like I am restless, irritable, discontent, chronically malcontent, like so unsatisfied. Everything around me uh, is just unsatisfactory. Like I will start picking apart how awful everything around me is. I'm like, I got this like 4-day gratitude window where I'm like somewhat grateful to have like a bed again and being eating food and being around nice people. But then after like 4 days, all of a sudden I like hate everyone around me. Um, and like I have this knot in my stomach that the only way I know how to describe it is just I'm just so bored with everything. And I think I have all these problems and all this outside like and I got to fix all these problems and nothing goes my way and and I'm a prey to misery and depression and I feel useless and if I don't do something quick, my mind's gonna tell me like Justin, that one thing that does give you ease and comfort. You're gonna fail anyways, dude. Just go and do it. Why we bother? Why bother? And I knew I was dying, and I was sober or drunk. Like if I don't have a solution, like alcoholism will kill me one way or another. Um, and I asked this man for help, and like the cool thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is like it has little to do with how I feel, and it has a lot to do with what I do. Like it's all about what my feet are doing. Um, and So we went through these steps, and I did it begrudgingly. I wasn't excited about it. I wasn't happy to be doing doing these steps, and like we went through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I wrote a fourth step. And you hear about the fourth step a lot, like it's this big, scary, long, arduous process, and it doesn't have to be. You know, all I'm looking at is like what areas, like my life up to the point that I got sober was a failure, not because of everyone else, but because of me, right? And because of self. Um, and and I saw that in that four step. And when I wrote that four step, like I no longer wanted to be that guy in the notebook. Because the guy in the notebook like was not a good dude, you know? And and I read that to my sponsor, and for the first time in my life, I was completely transparent and honest with someone about who I was. And I started to get free. And earlier on, he had like talked about this idea of God, right? And like that's what we offer here in Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual solution, right? Not super pumped to hear that, right? That's not my favorite thing, But I was so beaten that like I didn't fight it, and I had such a first step experience that I knew I was doomed. That when he asked me to pray, I prayed, you know. And he's like, kid, like whatever conception of God you have, however, whatever makes sense to you, is completely fine. And so I was like, all right, like so I used Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead as my higher power in the beginning, and like it worked because I didn't drink again, And as I go through the steps, like I start to develop a deeper relationship with this thing I call God now. Um, and I went out and I made those amends, and that was the game changer for me. Like I went out and I cleaned the wreckage of my past, and like and the people I hurt the most were those that were closest to me, right? Like my family, my mother, my father, my grandmother, like those people who loved me, anyone who loved me, like I caused harm to. And I had to take the lead on like trying to start to repair that damage, and then sit down with my family. And like when I made amends to my mother, like she told me things like, "Hey, me and your father have been setting aside money um, be- to plan for your funeral." I was 24 years old, like parents of a 24-year-old shouldn't have to have a funeral plan. And like she told me things like, like me and your father like are almost on the verge of divorce because we don't know how to handle you. And like that's the damage that I didn't even see because I'm so wrapped up in me, and wrapped up in me getting what I need to get. And like seeing that stuff was like, and hearing that stuff and face to face, like the damage I caused was humbling. Um, and and I was probably about I don't know 3 or 4 months sober, and my sponsor sent me out to start working with others. Um, so like I was brought through this stuff like pretty rapidly, right? And I found that like being of service and helping others and trying to help others find the solution, like is what saves me, and it's what keeps me here, and it's what keeps me sober. Like, because sobriety over the last 12 years hasn't always been pretty. It hasn't like so like if your sobriety is kind of messy sometimes, like I totally relate with that. Like I've stopped doing some of this stuff that keeps me well, and I've caused harm in sobriety, and I have to make amends for that. I've had dark times in sobriety, but I've never stopped. My experience is like I've never stopped or drifted away from Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've never stopped helping others. Even I've stopped doing all the other. I've stopped taking inventory. I've stopped, talking to God, but I've never stopped helping others. And I've managed to like not pick up. Thank you to God's grace, and like so I've had a shot to get back on the beam spiritually. Um, and it's not always easy. Life isn't always easy. Stuff's gonna happen. That's tough. 3 years ago, that man who put my hand in the hand of God's that sponsor, he sponsored me for about 9 years. I got a call one night that he like suddenly passed away from a heart attack. And that guy was the guy who like pulled me from the darkness. And that was hard. That was hard. Um, but like I knew to do the things he taught me and keep moving my feet and keep showing up in Alcoholics Anonymous and keep taking service jobs and get on young people's committees and put on like conventions, even though being on a committee sometimes will drive you absolutely nuts. Um, but it gets me out of me. Um, and and about and honestly, it took me 2 years until I found another sponsor. And by the time I found another sponsor, I was pretty deep in untreated alcoholism. And I found that sponsor at the perfect time because about a little over a year ago, my mom gets diagnosed with bladder cancer, and I have to start showing up for that. And she was number one on my resentment list when I got here, right? And the cool thing about all of that is like because I had made an amends, and my sponsor always told me no matter how she makes you feel, you show up and you be a son because you robbed her of that for a long time. And I did that year after year, even and by the time she was diagnosed and going through all this cancer stuff, that resentment finally was gone. And I was able to show up for her like she showed up for me when I was sick with this stuff. And it was a tough process. A lot of like good news, then bad news, and good news, then bad news, surgeries, and bringing her to chemo. And it was such an honor, one of the greatest honors of my life to be able to show up for that woman. And she became like my best friend. Um, and around Christmas time last year, the cancer came back and it got really aggressive, and she started to deteriorate. And like we had to bring her home on hospice, and and I was like involved in those decisions, like which is wild, which is why it's wild. It's a miracle. And every day that she was on hospice, like members of Alcoholics Anonymous drove 3 hours to be with me and my family. I got to sit with her and like as she passed and walk her home, and we were clean, we were good, resentments were gone, amends were made, and like without Alcoholics Anonymous, like I would have missed that, you know, without amends, I would have missed that, without taking direction of a sponsor, I would have missed that. Um, and like 50 or so members of AA drove 3 hours and were there for us at her funeral. And I'll always be grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's been an amazing journey and an amazing life. Like Jason said, I was asked like a week after my mother's funeral, the day after my mother's funeral, I was elected chair of NECYPAA, which was crazy. God knew I needed another service committee to be on. Um, I was serving as alternate delegate throughout this time. Like just all the service has saved my life and kept me busy. And I was asked to speak in Vancouver, which was crazy. like it's been a wild year. It's been a wild year. I went through the steps again. Um, and I have this relationship with God that I can like lean on and trust no matter what. And I haven't thought about drinking throughout this whole thing. And now the holidays are coming up, and it's like a little weird. It's tough. It's the first year without mom, but but I'm also at peace too. And because I have this relationship with God, I have you guys in Alcoholics Anonymous, and now like I can show up and not think about me, but think about how can I be of service to the rest of my family that misses her, you know? Um, but it's a wonderful journey. So like if for all the new folks, like get plugged in with someone. And even if it, like I can put my number in the chat if anyone that needs to talk or whatever. My sponsor that I currently have, I've met him in person 3 times, and we did all the work over the phone. So like I used to have an old idea that that wasn't something that was possible, but I've had an experience with that now, and like now I can see kind of how this Zoom stuff is effective as well. Um, so my timer is up here. I'm getting the buzzer, but it's an honor to be here. And if you're new, please like reach out to someone and let them help you guide you through this process. And I promise you, like it will change your life. Thank you.